All right, so just going through a slide deck here. The first slide here, you can see just the basic information. So Solarize Nova is what we call the program that we put on, and we do try to put on once or possibly twice a year a limited time campaign that we may call, you may see it more labeled to locality. So sometimes we'll say Solarize Alexandria, Solarize Fairfax County, etc. So if you see any of those names, they all are part of the brand Solarize Nova. And we also do I want to make sure the slides are working here. And so we also do a sister campaign in Central Virginia in the Piedmont area. So we call that Solarize Piedmont. So sometimes you might see that listed as well. It is a separate campaign. So we do have different installers and different prices and everything associated with that campaign, but we do try to run them around the same time. So just to let everybody know. And the website to visit, just solarizenova.org. And that's where you can get all our information, contact information, installer prices, and how to sign up as well. So that's the encompassing website name there, or URL. Okay, so just going through the deck here, we got what is LEAP. So LEAP stands for the Local Energy Alliance Program. So that's actually the nonprofit that I actually work for, and we manage the Solarize campaign. So LEAP was funded back in 2009 with the real mission of driving energy efficiency, mostly in residential, but also in some commercial properties as well, and trying to support, local economic development and really try to reduce carbon usage and energy usage across residential and commercial properties. So if you're ever in Charlottesville, once things kind of get a little more back to normal in Virginia due to the COVID situation, we do open up our office to public visitors. So if you're interested in seeing how a retrofit of an old home is done, we do have plaques on the wall pointing out different things in the house that you can do and that has been done in this house specifically. And so you can look at, kind of do a tour of the office as long as somebody's there to help you out. So the address is there listed, 608 Ridge Street in Charlottesville. So feel free to, contact us if you're, in the area sometime in the future and want to take a look. We do have a small solar system on the back end of the house, a little harder to see, obviously in this photo, but also it is on a slight decline, so it's even hard to get a photo, but that does help cover a lot of our energy usage in that office space. And then up in Northern Virginia, so we expanded up here around the 2014 mark from just Charlottesville up into Northern Virginia. And our main partners in Northern Virginia is the Northern Virginia Regional Commission. So they're a regional council of at least 14 different local governments. For instance, Fairfax County, City of Fairfax, Arlington, Alexandria, etc. And they really help us get connected with those localities to put on different programs, whether it's Solarize or just energy efficiency programs that there are, available out there for residential properties, because we also do energy efficiency work and assessments as well. So feel free to visit their website. It's just novaregion.org, and they do all sorts of different programs within the region. And as I mentioned, the NVRC connects us with the local governments. And so these are listed here are all our spring 2020 partners. So the different localities going from Arlington, City of Alexandria, City of Fairfax, Fairfax County, Falls Church, Prince William, and Vienna. And you'll see here that we have Arlington, Prince William new to the Solarize campaign and program this year for the first time. And we originally started, I think, with just 3 back in 2014, and slowly different localities have seen the success of the program and wanted to join and be part of it. And so what is Solarize Nova in general? I've kind of, touched on it here and there, but more or less it's a campaign that we put on, a limited time campaign each year. And it's more or less, we try to create a one-stop shop for people to come and learn about solar. We put on info sessions just like this one today. Usually we'll do it in, public spaces, whether it's, city office buildings, city halls, libraries, etc. just to open it up to the public and allow everybody to come and, you know, learn about solar, ask their questions. Unfortunately, due to, you know, the COVID situation, we went ahead and have done a virtual webinar, and we've scheduled, this is the second of 4 throughout the limited time campaign this year. And actually with the virtual webinars, we've actually seen more participation than we have in the, you know, just the in-person session. So it's really great to see that. And this photo here is just the inside living room area of that house, which is our office space down in Charlottesville. And this was one of our very first Solarize campaigns, which is at the time just called Solarize Charlottesville. And in that campaign, it was so successful, we had, I think, just over 100 solar installations go in around that area. And so up in Northern Virginia, once we expanded in 2014, we kind of created a challenge, more internal than external, but I always listed on this slide just so that everybody knows, more or less we wanted to push ourselves to do 1,000 rooftops. So it's 1,000 separate solar installations. And we are coming up on 40% of that 1,000. So we're getting close to 400 installations, which we should surpass after this campaign's finished. And so the question is, why sign up for a Solarize program versus going out on your own to the market? More or less, we try to say it's a good deal because we're going out and trying to do all the homework up front for you as the homeowner, or even a business owner can go through the program as well. So we're putting it out, what we call a RFP, a request for proposal, to the public, essentially to any solar installer in the region that wants to try to bid to be part of the campaign each year. And so we put that RFP out, ask different, you know, criteria for the installer to list on the response, and we'll go through we call it a competitive bidding process, because they're going to be bidding on the different pieces of equipment and price points versus other solar contractors that want to be part of the campaign as well. And so this year we have had one contractor really surpass the others. They were part of it last year. Their name is Solar Energy World, which I'll touch a little bit on later in the presentation. And Brian's waving here on the screen. He's from Solar Energy World. So they did a great job last year, and so we usually end up with 2 different contractors. But this year we went with one because they really, you know, went far and beyond some of the other ones, and they did an amazing job last year. And so what we're trying to do is create a turnkey system or a standardized package for homeowners and business owners. So then that way they can come to us, you know, kind of go through the process, get connected with the installer, and the installer will be able to give them a proposal based on their energy needs and their, you know, whether it's roof space or ground space that they have available for a solar installation. And so that way you can get a proposal with no commitment up front, other than just really saying, hey, I'm interested in solar and I want to know if it's good for my house or not. And so some of the results, again, we're coming up on 400 installations. So this number is actually a little outdated. This was the beginning of this year, and we've had a few since then. But at that time, we had 372 contracts, which equaled over 3 megawatts of capacity. And just kind of put that in a dollar perspective, that was almost $9 million worth of contracts. So what we like to really, you know, put that number out there so everybody can see. First, the 3 megawatt number is quite large, but then that almost $9 million contract value is really big, because that's really trying to keep the solar industry going, and especially the regional solar contractors as well. And you can see here we had more than 85 contracts signed last year. And again, Solar Energy World, I think I listed on the other slide coming up here, but they did 2/3 of those contracts last year. And so here, you know, I try to include at least one photo on each page. This one you can see is an older home, but it worked really great for solar because you have that real, you know, great unobstructed roof space there. And this gentleman, this was, I think, 2 years ago when we did a campaign around the Fredericksburg area. This gentleman, this was actually his second solar installation, and I always kind of dive into the details a little bit on this photo, just because he was so excited to go solar. He literally bought this house a few months before, saw the Solarize campaign going on, and so it was great timing. He went ahead and signed up, And part of the Solarise program, since energy efficiency is kind of Leap's bread and butter, we want to make sure that you're reducing your energy usage first before you start producing it. And so what we did here is actually, it was myself. I went out to his house, did an inspection of the house, letting him know what he could do to improve the energy efficiency. So I remember specifically the insulation level of this house was original. So it was basically, 3-4 inches of bad insulation. It needed what we call air sealing, so sealing up all the floor of the attic, making sure that air that you're conditioning, spending money on, using energy to condition in the home isn't just escaping through the roof of the house or through the attic. And so we did that inspection for him to really try to reduce his energy needs first. And so I always highly recommend that. And that's something we do offer to every Solarize participant in the area, that you can get a free energy assessment from one of our colleagues to come out. And when you sign up, I'll include links on the website. There should be one on there, but there's also going to be a link in the emails when I reach back out to you once you sign up. And then who can sign up for Solarize in general? So Solarize Nova, as I mentioned, one of the couple first slides, all those localities. So I believe we're up to 7 this year. And so as long as you have a residence or a business in one of those 7 areas or jurisdictions, you're good to go. And all you really have to do is go to solarizenova.org, and there's going to be pretty easy directions on how to sign up. There's going to be a sign up button for you. Or you can always go ahead and just shoot us an email. It's just info@solarizenova.org, and I'll be in touch, and we'll collect information that way. So the sign up form, just to let you know, it pretty basic information, name, phone number, address, email address. Then there's a couple questions about your roof space, what type of roof it is, how old it is. If you do know it, if you don't worry. There is an option, saying you're not too sure. So we'll, go ahead and fill that out, and we'll be in touch with you. And I kind of went through this as I'm talking, I realized, but how does it work? You just go to the website again, sign up, or email us, and we'll get you signed up that way. We'll go ahead, once you sign up, within a couple days, we'll reach back out to you, letting you know what we see through our analysis. And so what we're going to do is take a look at different satellite imagery programs. Google Maps being the most known one, but there's a few other ones out there that can give more detail as well. And so we're going to take a look at your house, which way it faces, the roof space, if there's any obstructions on there like vents or pipes or anything. And then also the big one is shading. So from surrounding trees, if there's a large oak tree right next to your roof that's casting a shadow most of the day, that may be an issue that we might have to address. So that's what we're going to be looking for when you sign up. And so after we take a look, I'll go ahead and email you back, letting you know what I see. If everything looks good, we're good to go, no obstructions or shading, then I'll ask you to submit an electric bill. Most recent is best. That way we have the most up-to-date usage. And an electric bill itself is a little bit better, because we'll see the schedule rate of what you pay with your electric company as well. So 12 months is best. We understand sometimes people moved in 2 months ago, 3 months ago. As long as you really have at least 1 month, we really prefer just to see what that usage is. It would work best. And then, once we receive that, we'll go ahead and let the solar energy world, the solar installer, know to go ahead and reach out to you to start the discussion on the options and the details of your specific situation. And then eventually they'll be able to get you a proposal based on all that information. And I will say, if I come back and I see, once you sign up, I take a look and I see there is, a bunch of tree cover around your house, I'll take a screenshot, at least one. Usually I try to include a couple of them, because sometimes one might not be as up to date as the other one. I'll email you saying, hey, there might be some shading aspects or other aspects that might be creating an issue. Can you let me know if this screenshot looks up to date or not? And then that way, you can respond and say, oh, I had 2 or 3 trees fall down in the last month or 2, something like that. And then we'll take the conversation further from that point. And so this is kind of just a diagram showing you the summer sunrise sunset versus the winter sunrise sunset. It is turned a little bit here. You got north to the left and south to the right, just to give you a better view of the angles. And so what we're looking, this goes in conjunction with what I'm looking at through some of that satellite imagery. So ideally, you want a south-facing roof space is going to get the most sun throughout the day. East and west facing do work as well with a little bit less production, but really we're just going to shy away from a north-facing roof space because you can see, since we're in the northern hemisphere, we don't really receive direct sunlight on that north-facing roof. So this is just a diagram to kind of give you a little example of the sun, path and what I'm looking for when I'm looking at that satellite imagery. And so just kind of moving on to, very basics of a solar installation, kind of what I call Solar 101, really just talking about the main pieces of equipment and how they kind of work together. So I generally say a whole solar installation itself will take a few days to, get everything up on the roof installed, or whether it's a ground mount, it may take a little bit longer. But usually the installation itself won't take all that long, just a few days. What takes the longest is really going through the whole design process, permitting, the interconnection with the electric grid, approval from the utility, different things like that. So usually I say 6 to 12 weeks. It really kind of depends on the different situations and jurisdictions you might live in. Sometimes a permit process may take only a day. Sometimes it may take a few weeks. So I do say, an average 6 to 12 weeks there. And then the components here. So we got just one solar panel here, just as an example. So that's what a photovoltaic panel looks like, or module really is what we would call it in the industry. So those are what, we string those together and put those on a roof or a ground mounted system. And then really the productive life of those guys, we say, is at least 25 years plus, because that's one of the guarantees that all solar panels really come with, is a production guarantee. So what that means is it's not going to go from day one to year 25. The output or the production of that panel is not going to go below a certain percentage, and usually a standard is 80%. Some of the panel manufacturers have bumped that up a few percentage points, but 80% is usually the very minimum. And so in conjunction with the panels or the modules, we'll have the racking hardware. And so these will go up on the roof here. You got different types of roofs, just as examples. So once we get those guys in place, it really doesn't take all that much longer to go ahead and get the panels locked in place, set and secure. They will usually sit about 3 inches above the roof, so there is a little bit of space underneath for airflow, and that actually helps the panels in the efficiency of their production, because we want to keep it as cool as possible to make sure that those panels don't overheat, because even though they like sunshine, they don't like the heat. As they get hotter and hotter, the efficiency rate will slowly dip down a little bit. So we want to keep them off the roof just a few inches. And so the other, besides the racking hardware and the modules or panels themselves, the other main pieces of equipment, or piece of equipment depending, is what we call the inverter. So there's a few options here, but what this really does is it takes the production of the solar module or panel, which is in DC electricity, but your home uses AC electricity. So this inverter is going to convert that DC to AC for you. And so we got a few different options here. We got a big guy on the left-hand side, which is just a string inverter. So all the panels will be tied together or strung together into this inverter. And then the couple options on the bottom work similar. One's a microinverter, which would be actually installed on the back of each panel. And instead of tying all the panels together, it's going to convert that DC to AC right there at the panel, at that microinverter spot. And then flow into the house. Or you'll have an optimizer, which works very similar, but in conjunction with an inverter as well. And the reason you might want a microinverter or DC optimizer is kind of in the name. It optimizes the output of the solar panel, or of each individual panel. So for instance, if you have some shade on half the roof where the array is installed, the shading, if you only have them all tied together on a string inverter, some shading on just 1 or 2 panels will actually bring down the output of the entire system. So with microinverters or optimizers, this way it'll optimize, and even if 1 or 2 panels are shaded, it's not going to bring down the production of the remaining panels on the roof or out in the yard. And so I really say rely on the installer for what they suggest works best. The price difference is none. There is none there. And so just having the installer really give you the best recommendation, kind of relying on them, since they do it day in and day out, they really know what would work best. And then just kind of putting all the pieces of equipment together here on one diagram, kind of to see the flow of electrons or electricity here. So we got the sunshine, up in the right-hand corner, shining down on the array. The electrons will go into the inverter, or like I said, if you have microinverters, it would happen at the point of the panel. But eventually, they'll be converted into AC electricity, and then you'll have some safety disconnect switches, different things like that, and then straight into your electric panel. And if you're using electricity right then and there, any generation or any production you're generating is going to be used right away. But if you're not using that much electricity in the home, for instance, you're not home and there's no lights or electronics currently being used, that extra production that your array is generating is going to flow back through your electric meter and onto the grid. And then that just kind of goes right into the next slide here. I always get the question, do I get paid for any excess generation that I put onto the grid? I always respond, you don't get you don't get cash or directly paid in cash or anything like that. But what we call the situation is called net metering. And so what that means is you're going to get a 1-for-1 credit. So any kilowatt hour you put onto the grid, you're going to be able to pull off the grid without any excess charge or price. So this diagram was actually taken from the Dominion Energy website a few years ago, and it's just a diagram giving you an example, just a high-level example. So we got the sun shining down, and the solar panels or solar system is generating 1,100 kilowatt hours at that time. However, the house is only using 1,000 kilowatt hours. So you have that extra 100 kilowatt hours you're not using. So that's going to go back through the meter, and it's going to read that through the inverter and the meter and everything, and then onto the grid. And you're going to get 100 kilowatt hour credit that you can use at a later date, whether that's that night when the sun goes down and you need to pull more energy from the grid, or if you're kind of accumulating those credits throughout the days, throughout the summer, because the sun's shining much longer throughout the summertime. You'll start to pull from those credits once the sun isn't shining as long in the sky. So in the fall or winter time. So this is again called net metering, and I like it because there's no exchange of actual currency going on. It's really just credits, and so you don't have to worry about any income or tax situations there, and it's just really clean situation. So I'm not going to really stay on this slide too long because it's all on our website, but this is the pricing that our contractor is offering through Solarise. And it is generally about 15–20% cheaper through the program versus going to them directly, just market rate. We do have different tiers here. So as you can see, the smallest system you can get through the program is a 3 kilowatt system. That's roughly 10 panels. And then it goes up from there, and the price decreases slightly once you pass that 5 kilowatt threshold. The ground mounts are a little bit more expensive because there's just a lot more involved in installing those. Kind of creating the racking situation, running conduit lines, different things like that will increase the price slightly. And then you'll see at the bottom here EV chargers. So I do have a slide, I think the next one or two. It doesn't have a lot of information, but EV chargers are part of the program. The installer will install one for you, and we have had a lot of interest, especially with the electric car market really taking off the last year or two. So they are offering EV chargers, and it is going to be slightly cheaper if you do EV charger along with solar rather than just doing EV charger by itself. So do keep that in mind. And just here, I'd like to point out that over the years since 2015, the Solarise prices have dropped just about 25%. We have seen them slightly plateau over the last year or so, just to kind of keep that in mind, because I always do get the question, should I install solar now if it's going to continue to drop over the next few years? And I do tell people, it probably will drop slightly, not as much as it has over the last decade or so. But the sooner you get it, the sooner you're going to start saving and getting that payback, rather than waiting a year or two. And so the big incentive in Virginia, unfortunately, there's no state incentives happening. However, there is a federal tax credit uh, of 26%. So that's 26% of the total installation costs. It is a credit, so you will have to have tax liability in order to recoup that 26%. However, if you can't do it in the first year, you can roll over some of it to the second year as well. It is going to go down to 22% starting at the end of this year, so starting in 2021, and then it's only going to be around 2021, and it's going to set to expire in 2022 for residential situations, unless the unless the U.S. Congress want to change or update it or reenact it. There is also, I will mention, depending on the locality you live in, and a lot of them in Northern Virginia do have it, there is what we call a solar equipment tax exemption or tax credit. Sometimes you'll see it labeled. And so that is a small incentive that your locality, whether it's Fairfax County, for example, or City of Alexandria, they will exempt the solar installation from your assessment value. And that also, so your property tax is not going to go up due to just installing solar. And also there is a little bit of a credit back, I believe, on your property tax, which all the links are going to be on our website. We try to link to each jurisdiction's website with the page associated with the solar equipment tax exemption. And then this is just a high-level example of some costs associated with a solar installation. Just a couple different examples. 7 kilowatt, which we've seen that used to be the average installation size. Now we've seen a larger installation size as the average. So I went ahead and put a 10 kilowatt system here just as an example. So you'll see the first line item is the total installation costs before that tax, the federal income tax credit, and then the second line is going to be after that 26% tax credit. So you can see it get reduced there. And then the third line item here is what we call the annual kilowatt hours produced in the first year. And so, 9,000 kilowatt hours roughly is produced by a 7 kilowatt system. It is a rough estimate. Each house is going to be a little different just based on the tilt and orientation of the roof space. And so this is just kind of an average here. And your proposal, once you receive and talk to the solar installer, we'll give you a little bit more information on how many kilowatt hours the proposed solar installation will produce for you. And then the last fourth line item here is we label it as the average monthly income in the first year. And I put income in quotes specifically because, again, you're not actually getting money. You're not getting paid for it. However, this is more or less what you're offsetting in electric costs. So each month in the first year, on average, for a 7 kilowatt system is going to produce you $82 worth of electricity. And then the 10 kilowatt is going to be just about $120 worth of electricity per month. And so again, I just always have this slide here just to make sure I do mention the EV chargers are part of the program, since we've had real high demand for them. And they really pair great with a solar system. So again, if you're interested, when you fill out the form on the website, there is going to be a question: are you interested in just solar or just a charger or both of them? And so that way we'll the solar installer and ourselves will know which ones you're interested in, so that we can give you some more information about it. And then just some of the warranties here, and all the main warranties involved with all the large pieces of equipment. So I will start off by saying the solar installer does have a 10-year workmanship warranty. So this is becoming standard, but since I started a few years ago with the Solarise campaign, a lot of solar installers at that time only did a 5-year workmanship warranty. So we do make sure there is a 10, and Solar Energy World does offer 10-year workmanship warranty. And then on top of that, each of the pieces of equipment will have, and you can see here, the 10 across the board pretty much. So solar modules or panels, the inverters, the mounting hardware, all have a 10-year manufacturer product warranty at least. So that's a minimum. And then again, the solar panel will have a 25-year performance guarantee. Again, that means from day 1 to year 25, it's guaranteed not to drop below at least 80% minimum of the production. And then the EV chargers have a 3-year manufacturer product warranty. And so just kind of finishing up here with a real life example, and I always do include this one just because it was one of our first ones back in end of 2014/2015 with one of our partners at NVRC. And so he went ahead and did a 4.5 kilowatt system, and you can probably see on the roof here, it's towards the top. He probably could have installed a few more panels to produce a little bit more, but at the time, that worked just great for him. And in 2015, he generated enough electricity to generate just about $720 worth of electricity, or just over 6,500 kilowatt hours. And so here, not so much pointing out the details, but this is just kind of a graph showing you the output or the production of his array throughout the first 2 years. And you can see, the ups and downs, and that is associated with the seasons. So the higher the production is usually in the summer, and then you'll drop down below here. The lower ones are in the winter time. And I do know the first purple bar line is much lower in the middle of the summer there. And I always point that out because he always talks about it. And that was a very rainy and very cloudy month that year. So that's why that one's a little bit lower. And then this is just another example from another partner of ours. When he installed solar, he just took a screenshot of his monitoring system. So every solar system is going to have online monitoring. You can take a look at live data, kind of just see how your solar system is performing. And so here, it has all different pieces of information for you, whether it's the current power, energy today, this month, lifetime, etc. It will look different based on the different inverter brands that you go with. So this one's a Solar Edge inverter. The one that in the program is a couple other ones. So they have very similar information. The layout might just look a little different. And so that's a real good use, whether you're home on your computer, you want to take a look at how your system's doing. And then even some of the brands have apps on, like phone apps, so you can take a look even if you're not home or not at a computer, just to see how how your system is performing at that time. And then I always point this out too. It's a map that was put together by NVRC and some of their partners back a few years ago. So it's NOVASolarMap.com. It's a free resource. You can go in, go ahead. It's a mapping program where you put in your address, and it should have basically every property, unless it's pretty new over the last couple of years. It should have every property in there. And what they do is take some LiDAR data and overlay that on top of satellite imagery. And so this screenshot here just shows you kind of what it looks like. You'll enter your address in the top left-hand corner there, and it'll zoom into your house, and you'll see the different colors on top of the roof. And the different colors really signify, how much direct sunlight's hitting that roof space. And so it acts as a heat map. So red means a lot more sun is reaching that roof. Blue means basically no direct sunlight, and that's why most of these northern-facing roofs are blue in this screenshot here. And you'll see some yellow. Usually it's a light yellow or a dark yellow, and that's kind of in between, meaning that there may be some sunlight reaching it, but there might be, it might be filtered through some leaves or something like that. So it might be, you might need to have more of an analysis done. And I will always kind of caveat this by saying, this map or this website, this mapping program, is a really good conversation starter and a good way to kind of take a look at your house, just preliminary. Check on your own. It doesn't really go into the detail that a solar installation company is going to do. But what you can do, and most of the single families work this way. Some of the townhomes may or may not be individually marked, but you can click on the house and a little box will pop up next to it, kind of giving you some basic estimated values on, how much roof space might be available with direct sunlight hitting it, the average size system that might be able to fit on that roof space with the sun hitting it, and basic estimates on how much generation could possibly happen. Again, I do caveat it all. You know, there's some disclaimers on the website on how they created the mapping and the overlay. Again, just a great conversation starter to take a look at and you know, talk to neighbors about, or if you want to just check out your house. But you know, if you see it all blue or all red, you know, there may be some other things that may be playing there. So definitely still sign up, and we'll get you connected with an installer if we deem that the house is still very viable. So here we go. So Solar Energy World. Again, I mentioned earlier in the presentation, they were one of 2 contractors last year in the program. They did a phenomenal job. You can see here they signed 66 of the 88 contracts last year, so basically 2/3 of the contracts, and you know, they did an amazing job. And I will say, you know, that really played into us scoring their proposal this year, based on the different aspects. You know, price being a big one, the equipment, but their performance last year and their customer service really played into it. Usually once, you know, you go through the process, once I email back to you saying the installer is going to contact you in 1 to 2 days, usually they'll be in touch, I say within 24 hours, unless it's a weekend or something different, you know, something special like that. And if for any circumstance I, you know, let you know they're going to contact you and you don't hear from them in 24 hours or so, feel free to respond to me, and we'll make sure, you know, nothing fell through the cracks. Sometimes emails get mixed up. So I will, that's the last slide I have here. So I will let Brian Hacker, he's from Solar Energy World. He's on the call here. I'm just going to let him introduce himself, his company, and kind of give a little bit information about that.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. So thanks for having me, Ryan. I appreciate the presentation. I'm Brian Hacker. I'm the Vice President of Sales with Solar Energy World. We've been in business since 2009 in Maryland. And when I started in the solar industry, I actually lived in Alexandria, and I grew up in Northern Virginia, and have been very active trying to see good solar policy get passed in Virginia. And this year we had a really significant success with the Virginia Clean Energy Act, the VCEA, which actually increased some system size limits that Dominion had. It removed some of the standby charges. It just made solar a whole lot more equitable in Virginia. So we're really excited to see that. You know, the great thing about these co-op programs is it helps kind of address a large crowd, and it allows us as an installer to educate groups of people versus kind of one-on-one education, which saves us time, and we kind of pass that on to customers through financial savings. So that's also something that is a really big benefit to these types of programs. You know, our company installs, out of our Maryland office, we install about 1,400 systems a year. We also have offices in New Jersey and Tampa, Florida. One of our big kind of claims to fame is every person that works on every job is a full-time employee. So I have 14 installation crews running out of my Maryland office. They do about 120 or so installations a month. And that's very unique in the solar industry. Most companies are subcontracting electrical work or subcontracting roof work. So we do everything in-house, from design to engineering to construction, and then helping with and assisting with incentives and things like that. So looking forward to working with everybody and helping out where I can.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Really appreciate it. I'm just going to move the slide to the next one just so that everybody has our contact info and the website. And if I didn't already mention it, I may have forgot earlier in this campaign, or in the slideshow, that the campaign it started on June 15th, and it is going to run through 31st of August. So what that really means is, you know, all you have to do is sign up by August 31st saying you're interested, and then we'll take it from there. So that doesn't necessarily mean you have to sign a contract by August 31st. But I will say the sooner you sign it, the better, to make sure you get your installation done by the end of the year so that you can get that 26 versus the 22% in the tax credit. So I did want to mention that. And I did make a mistake on my slide. I do see Brian corrected me. So the workmanship warranty for the program is 20 years versus 10. I got carried away with saying everything was a minimum of 10 years, I think, and that's probably why. So that's great to see. So I am going to open it up. Our colleague Erin Morgan here, she is helping us kind of filter, and I can kind of see the chat box going up and down here, her answering some of the things for us already. But I'm going to have her kind of chime in. She's going to introduce herself, or what she does at Leap, and then she'll kind of start off by asking the questions, and myself and Brian will do our best to answer everything for you.
Thanks, Ryan and Brian. I'm Erin. As Ryan mentioned, I work at Leap. I'm the marketing and outreach manager. So I've been trying to sort of answer some questions along the way and just keeping track of questions. So I'm just going to toss them out, and Brian and Ryan can just kind of take them as they come, whichever of you feels equipped to answer. And I'm kind of going to go through them as they were coming in and as people had several questions each. Hopefully I think some of it got covered throughout your presentation, so I won't ask all of those, obviously. But I'll start with, one person was asking if there's any slowdown to be expected during COVID. So Ryan, if you both, or either of you, if you could just speak to the process, if anything's being impacted by the current pandemic.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just start off by saying the very original, the original delay was that we were first going to do the campaign a few months ago, really going to kick it off early June, or not June, even before that. So it got delayed due to COVID, but we still had a lot of demand and a lot of interest for solar, so we really still wanted to do a campaign this year, and so it did get delayed a couple months. So on our end, that's the real only delay on Leap's end. There shouldn't really be any other delays from Leap. I'll let Brian answer, for Solar Energy World though.
So yeah, we're still installing at a very decent clip. Business is slightly slower than we'd like it to be at this time of year. We have seen some local municipalities and counties in their permitting processes. The timelines have kind of gotten stretched out, but everything is still it's all moving forward. It's just not always moving as fast as we'd like. We typically try and set the expectation that from point of contract to point of install, we're looking at about 90 to 120 days. And that expects us to have 2 or 3 weeks in the permitting process. And sometimes it's going over a month right now. But we expect those timelines to continue to improve as people can, as municipalities continue to open up and people are working in the office more.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. And just a note that, so even if there are some delays in the permitting process, as long as you get your interest form submitted by the 31st, then the pricing of the Solarize campaign will still be honored for everybody who signs up.
Yep.
So that's a good thing to note. Some roof specific questions that we got. Somebody mentioned that that their home's under a tree canopy, so they would not be able to do rooftop, but do you have any other options for other type of installs for a home if they can't install on the roof?
So it would depend on how much land they have. In a lot of areas, they require us, if we're looking at a ground mount solar array, to be on more than about 2 acres. Some areas limit it to 3 acres of land. So there would need to be some cleared space somewhere. The unfortunate fact is not all homes are candidates for solar. So if you are kind of buried in trees and you don't have a clear open field or enough land to do a ground mount, we might not have an option.
Gotcha. So
I will just chime in a little bit, not necessarily answering that question because Brian already did, but I will say, the trees, even though they cast shadows on your house, they will reduce your energy usage if you otherwise didn't have those trees, especially in the summer months, in the cooling season. So that they do help out in a different way, and also just environmental benefits to that as well. And if you don't necessarily have a great roof for solar, we can still do the home energy assessment for you, as long as you're in the Northern Virginia region. And so go ahead and you can contact us whether you want to sign up or just directly email us at that info@solarizenova.org in order to get you signed up for that assessment as well.
I'm not a big proponent for clear cutting trees just to put solar panels up. I think those two things are at odds with each other.
Yeah. I should have mentioned that too. Same here.
Yes, we're not anti-trees. A couple other roof questions. Someone's asking if you can speak about installing on a residential flat rubber roof.
Sure. There's a couple different.
Sorry, go ahead.
Was there a follow-on to that? There's a couple different methods we could use. One of the requirements that we have is that there's attic access to that residential roof, so there needs to be visibility to the underlying structure. A lot of the types of mounting we need would either be a ballast, which would be a non-penetrating type of mount, or we would do something called a post and chem curb buildup, where we would actually need to install some blocking underneath the roof, and then there would be a built-up flashing around every single roof attachment point. Both of those are really good, types of attachments for flat roofs, but they also ensure that we're not doing anything to jeopardize the integrity of that roof. Like, a roof's first most important job is to be able to keep the water out.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Another roof question is, if your home is due for new shingles, do you recommend replacing those first? And then how hard is it to replace once the panels are installed?
So our rule of thumb is we want a roof to have at least 10 years of life left in the roof before we want to consider it for solar. And it's not terribly complicated, but it is expensive and time intensive to remove solar panels to install a new roof. We've been in business for 11 years now, and we're starting to see some of the customers we did business with 8, 9, 10 years ago starting to need to replace roofs. And typically that's, a 2-day job where somebody goes out to remove all the modules and all of that. Conversely, if a roof has, more than half of its life left, if it's got more than 10 years, the solar panels on top of that roof should extend the life of those roof areas. A lot of times it's not the area under the solar panels that's needing to be replaced. It's an area that didn't have solar on it, and they're replacing the whole roof as one.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. All right, and then one more rooftop question is if you all have any experience with designing bio-solar roofs, so green roofs combined with solar.
We're working with a company on a commercial project in DC that's a green roof with solar over top. We don't do that residentially, and it wouldn't. The scope of this project is this is a $500,000 type investment to build this entire system. Trying to do that on a residential scale wouldn't work.
Mm-hmm. But I like where their head is. It's a dream. That's the dream. I'm going to shift over to some more financing questions. One thing is just the cost. If you could speak, Ryan, a little bit to the cost of the EV chargers and how that might be different to do as a part of Solarize versus not. And then also as far as what the financing options generally are with Solarize and with Solar Energy World. And there was another one, the ROI of the capital cost.
So yeah, I'll touch on just a couple basics, and then I'll let Brian chime in. So we did kind of mention already, but we did really see a lot of interest in EV chargers over really the last few years, and we included it a little bit in our campaign last year, but we've had a lot more interest over the last year since we did the campaign, and so we really wanted to include it and kind of put it out there a little bit more in some of our marketing materials or outreach materials for this year's campaign. So we do have, I went ahead back to the pricing page so everybody can see it. Again, it is all on our website. You can go to solarizenova.org. But you'll see here, the very last item listed is the EV charger. So it is going to be $1,750 without solar, or $1,500 with solar. So there's a little bit discount because the solar installer is already kind of working with the electrician, doing the electrical work to install the solar array and system. So that way we can combine the EV charger at the same time and save a little bit on the labor associated with that installation. I don't know if Brian, you want to add anything a little bit more to that on EV chargers.
That's the pricing for a level 2 charger. And Ryan, you and I can kind of touch base offline because we had some discussions on that. I do have some options to present to you on the EV charger, but it'll actually work out to be less than that.
Great to hear. And sorry, Aaron, I can't remember exactly all the remaining of the question that was involved in that one.
The financing?
Yeah, there were some questions about sort of what financing options are available, as well as with what the ROI, what predictions you could make about ROI from the capital cost.
So if you're looking at a cash purchase, your ROI is going to land somewhere in the 8 to 12% range. You're looking at a system that's going to pay for itself in somewhere between, I say 7 to 9 years is a pretty typical payback for a purchased system. If you're financing a system, in a lot of instances, our finance programs, and we kind of let everybody talk to people individually about that because people qualify for different things. But we have some programs that are, if I'm saving $85 a month, my monthly payment for solar might be $95 or $100 a month. So it might be costing me $10 or $15 more a month than otherwise. But after that loan is paid off, that could be a 12 or a 15-year loan. After it's paid off forever. Also, the big thing with Dominion is they've already announced that they expect rates over the next 4 to 5 years to increase pretty significantly.
Yep. Okay. So the main takeaway, I think, for financing is probably that it kind of depends. The options that each person might have available kind of depends on the person.
Yeah, well, and we do have lots of options available. One of the really popular ones is where we finance just the incentives, so like the federal tax credit amount. And that way you're not, let's say you've got this money in an investment or in a money market account or something like that, rather than selling an investment right now that might not be where you'd want to sell it, you could take that 0% financing and then just pay the balance of the system cost after the installation is complete.
Okay. And then a related question kind of just came in asking about if you have observations on solar systems' impact on home value, whether or not having a system installed would increase or otherwise affect your home's value.
Today is an awesome day to ask that question of me because I just got my appraisal back on the refi for my house. And so hold on a second, and I'm going to share with you what the appraiser said. Let me see if I can summarize this. Subject is a net zero electric use, which sends an annual refund check back to the owner annually up to $100. Last year's production was 13.5 thousand kilowatt hours, with only 11,800 kilowatt hours used by the dwelling. The gross cost of 33 solar panels was approximately $30,000. Rebate tax credits. Three methods to determine value: capitalized contributory value, discounted cash flows, depreciated cost. These methods show a range between $15,000 to $25,000 in value to the home. The value for this home was $20,000. So basically what the appraiser said on the appraisal that I did actually receive today was that my $30,000 solar array added $20,000 in value to my house.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
And then also one more financing question of, is the financing transferable to a new owner or must it be paid off at the time of the sale? So if someone sells their home, what happens sort of to the payment of the install?
I have both types of programs. I do have one finance partner we work with that allows you to just transfer that financing to the new owner. And then I have programs that we would actually pay it off in the sale of the home or out of the proceeds for the home.
Okay, perfect. We had a couple different questions about condos. So do you all work with condos? One person mentioned that they're one of the largest south-facing roofs in the city of Fairfax. An analysis was done in 2016. So they're wondering sort of what the options are there with regard to solar, but as well with can you install multiple EV chargers, for example, at a condo building?
So multiple EV chargers would get kind of out of our scope. We do just residential work. So anytime we're talking about, big concrete cutting or taking power off of mains, like the type of EV charger we install is typically coming off of a single home system. When you've got multiple EV chargers, you're dealing with big high voltages. So that's probably outside of the scope of the type of work that we would be experienced to do. Unfortunately, we haven't really seen a great uptake with condo buildings and solar. And one of the biggest reasons is the greatest incentive for solar, or the biggest one that assists with payback, is the fact that there's a federal tax credit. And even if a condo association has some level of profits per year, they typically don't have the type of tax equity that would allow them to take advantage of any of that tax credit. So what would happen is I would have a system that, if I was an individual homeowner, might pay for itself in 7 to 9 years. On a condo building, I could be looking at a payback of 15 to 17 years. And then also these types of things, whenever they go to a board and a vote, most often you'll need some level of unanimous type vote for a big capital expenditure like that, where each individual in the building would be paying a large sum of money to invest in the solar array. And so I have yet to see one of those kind of come to fruition.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So it is 7 o'clock, but we do have a handful more questions. Do you guys have some time to stay on for another 10 minutes or so?
Yeah, I can probably do another 10.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. There were several questions about batteries and storage and being off the grid. So I was hoping you guys could speak to that a bit, about thoughts on battery backup, thoughts on the cost and usefulness, and then also options about being able to be off the grid. Is that worth it? And kind of related, someone was asking if there's an impact if a power outage happens during a prolonged cloudy day stretch. Sort of how does that impact if a house is getting power?
So I just want to mention up front, and I'll let kind of Brian answer some of the other ones, but so with the Solarize campaign, we have had a lot of interest, just kind of like the EV charger interest. We've had a lot of people bring up the idea of battery storage over the last year or two. The reason we haven't really included any kind of battery storage in our program specifically is mostly due to the cost and the development of the technology that's currently going on. So the cost will, for battery storage, will definitely add a significant amount to the solar installation in general. Not to say, you can't do it or anything. We do see a lot of people do it. But the whole idea of the Solarize campaign was to really try to reduce the cost of solar systems for homeowners and business owners. So we haven't really included battery technology because there's also various battery technologies out there. So trying to compare apples to apples from one installer to the next made it a lot harder versus a solar panel or module and an inverter, where it's much more standardized across the board between the solar installation companies. So I just want to kind of mention that that's why you don't see any pricing for batteries on our list or on our website or anything like that. However, I do know, Solar Energy World does offer battery storage as a product, and I'll go ahead and let Brian go in a little bit more detail on that.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, so we've done probably, I want to say 3 or 4 of the Solarize Nova clients have chosen to go with batteries. The kind of state of battery technology today, in my opinion, is we're still very early stage. So there's a lot of room for prices to drop pretty drastically and for technology to improve pretty markedly. Battery systems start in the $10,000, $11,000 range. They go all the way up to the $30,000 to $40,000 range if you want to get into like a whole home backup scenario. And then also kind of 100% of the work we do is grid tied, meaning you're still connected to the utility grid. You're not off grid. One of the big reasons for that is if you have a mortgage in your house, you're not allowed to disconnect from the grid. You wouldn't be able to insure your home, and then your mortgage company wouldn't continue to underwrite your mortgage. So that's one big challenge. The other one is there's no economic payback with net metering rules that we have in Virginia, you're basically being allowed to use Dominion as your giant battery backup, and they cost about $8 or $10 a month. That's your minimum electric bill. And so I generate more power than I consume during the day and push that out to the grid all day long. And then at night, I'm pulling that energy back from my grid battery backup. That's far cheaper than investing $30,000 in a whole home battery backup type scenario. Also, Dominion is giving me retail credit for all of that power, meaning for every kilowatt hour I push out, when I pull it back, I'm getting that same credit. That's my true cost avoidance there. So the battery backup systems we most often do today are just basically they're like generators. So they're backing up a critical loads panel. They're typically backing up 4 or 6 circuits in the home, and then there's kind of an auto transfer switch that, if the grid does go down, that's when the battery kicks on and starts providing power to those 4 or 6 circuits. So I still think that technology just has a pretty long way to come. We're installing, we've doubled our battery business every year for the past 2 years though. But prices still have yet to really start to creep down as much as I think they can. As you see more electric cars on the road, that type of stuff, I think we'll really see battery prices. What you buy today for 10 or 15 grand is likely going to be $4,000 or $5,000 at some point in the near future. Mm-hmm. And also, it can be added to a solar array in the future.
Gotcha.
And I just want to touch on, I know you mentioned one question about, possibly the grid going down during the day when the sun, whether it's cloudy or not. It is a safety aspect when you're tied to the grid that even if the sun's shining, your solar system will basically shut down as well. And that's, for a safety aspect. I don't know if, I know that was asked, so I just wanted to address that. I don't know if Brian, you had anything in more detail to mention on that, but
generally my understanding is Dominion has one of the more reliable grids in the country. Growing up in Northern Virginia and moving to Maryland, the first year I lived in Montgomery County, I was out power for 7 days total. I think in my entire young life before I moved to Maryland, I had been out power maybe a full day. So it's a very different experience. Maryland has since improved their grid since that happened, but the uptime or the reliability of the grid, a lot of times if I have a brownout or I have a couple hours of power going out or something like that, the power would return relatively quickly. The only time that you would, your cheapest option there, if you're looking for backup power in that scenario, is still some sort of plug-in generator.
Mm-hmm. All right, gotcha. We just have a couple more. There was a couple questions about how resistant the panels are to damage, as well as whether or not a standard homeowner's insurance covers damage to the panels, or sort of what the insurance options are there.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Take these, Ryan?
Yeah, sure. You know a little more on the details aspect.
So a standard homeowner's insurance policy will cover the solar panels. The solar panels are designed, all of them have like impact resistance testing and snow load testing and stuff like that. They're tougher than the roof that they cover. So all of the solar panels we install, they're designed to take a 2-inch piece of hail at 60 miles an hour. And they're designed, with snow loads of, 6 to 10 feet in mind. So they are very robust up there on a roof. I remember a couple years ago in Colorado at the National Renewable Energy Labs, they had a big hailstorm kind of blow through there. And they had 3,000 solar panels on site. And out of the 3,000 solar panels, there were 3 of them that were damaged by the hailstorm. But there were 300 cars in the parking lot that were totaled.
Yeah, it's a good perspective.
So they are extremely durable.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And then one last question that's pretty specific, but I did want to make sure to get to it, from Jeremy. is whether or not you have installed in Reston or dealt with the Reston Association approval process, which probably you could speak to that specifically, but also generally working with sort of homeowners associations.
Yeah, I'll mention. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, part of the Virginia Clean Energy Act that was passed this year removed the ability for homeowners associations to limit solar. I don't know off the top of my head if we have specifically done one in Reston. I was just kind of trying to do a search in our system of addresses in Reston to see if I've got one. But we will work with any homeowners association and kind of submit their approval process and all of that. And we're very used to doing that type of work.
And I know, you know, Jeremy probably lives there. So, and I lived there when I was younger and lived next door in Herndon. So I get that question a lot about the Reston Association, just because I know that they are known to be very, I guess, picky, I guess is the word to use. So I understand his question there. So, but as Brian said, you know, with some of the new legislation, it gets rid of some of the questionable past legislation that was up to more interpretation from HOAs. So.
Perfect. I think that's all the questions that I saw come through. So hopefully everybody got their questions answered.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. I really appreciate you helping filter those out. I'm just going to put the last slide on here just for another minute before we close out. Again, you know, if you have already signed up, I believe I've caught up to everybody today. Unless you've emailed me back, I will be in touch over the next day or so. And if you haven't signed up already, feel free to go ahead, sign up on the website at solarizenova.org, or you can go ahead and just directly contact us if you have any questions. The email is listed here. It's just info@solarizenova.org, and it should be myself that should be able to follow up with you. So if you have any questions, you know, feel free to shoot us an email. And again, the campaign or the solar or the sign up period is going to end on August 31st. I always kind of want to point that out again, saying you don't necessarily have to sign a contract by then, but the sooner, definitely the better. So I thank everybody for joining us today. It looked like we had a really good turnout again. And thank you, Aaron, for helping with the questions, and Brian for showing up and really answering a lot of the questions for us. It really helped us out. So with that, I thank everybody and hope you sign up and hope you go solar if you're able to.
Thanks, Ryan and Aaron. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Take care.